this is Fred from Profile, and back in July of last year, Dave Maros was here on Profile talking about Pattern Seeking Animals' first release, which was self-titled. This beautiful album here. I don't know if you can see it.
Good looking record.
It is, absolutely. This time around, I have the opportunity to talk with Jimmy Keegan, who I will be asking questions about the brand new album, Prehensile Tales. How are you doing, Jimmy?
I'm great, thanks. Yourself?
Absolutely. Pattern Seeking Animals will be releasing its second album on May 15th. Uh, is this like kind of odd to release an album knowing everything that the planet is going through right now?
You know, it's funny. I've been actually, I've learned information since as to why my wishes cannot come true. I've been trying to get them to release it now, and it's still relative to even releasing now. My thoughts were, unless you're selling, music at a super high pop level, Billie Eilish, Katy Perry kind of stuff. The type of money you're making is, you're not living off of it. It's almost really just covering costs, and so on that end, for artists like us, it means you're doing it for the sake of the art. The one thing I know is that, okay, this situation is unprecedented. We've never had anything like this. The closest thing you could compare, at least on our side of things, in the U.S., and I suppose Canada as well, was 9/11, and how we all had to kind of stop for a second to analyze what the heck is going on. And then you'd have to go back to, like World War II for anything. I mean, and various countries have had moments of things where my thoughts are, if people are home and people are in a state of mind of confusion, maybe sadness, maybe, all kinds of unusual emotions and circumstances we're not used to, art is the thing that we feed off of, whether it's, musical art or visual art or, television, movies, whatever it is. I'm of the mindset that put it out, and if it can put a smile on somebody's face, if it can take them out of that space for a minute, give them something else to think about, give them something to enjoy, then do it. Do it now. And I'm making the assumption that people are going to enjoy the record. But that's the hope. I mean, the thing is, if they don't like it, they don't have to. It's, they can not listen to it. They can, whatever. But the idea is, if it's something you enjoy, then here, let me see if I can be of assistance. Because I mean, the reality is, even in the best of circumstances, we're not making, like I said, we're not paying our bills with this. This is something we do because we want to do it. It's for the joy of it. If something happens on the bizarre side and it manages to sell a bunch of records, okay, great. That would be fantastic. But the reality is, we're doing this because we want to do it. We're doing it because we hope people enjoy it. And there's artistic integrity, hopefully.
Love it. Love it. Any any other negative or positive impacts releasing an album under these circumstances that you can think of?
Well, see, and that was my thoughts even about if I'd managed to get them to release it sooner. You have to assume that a lot of people are dealing with financial, negative financial situations. I'm, guilty. There's no work. Because, I mean, it's just, there's no anything. There's certain people still have jobs because of certain circumstances, and that's great. So, again, it comes back to, we weren't expecting to be making, we weren't expecting to be paying our rent with physical CD sales. It's more a question of getting it out, getting people listening to it. And if the word gets out and it gets spread, then that helps us, because we want to tour. So when the world comes back to a degree of normalcy, whatever that will be, and the concept of live shows comes into play, then we want to do that. But you can't do that unless people know who you are and are willing to come out and see you, regardless of circumstances. I mean, even under traditional circumstances, that's what you hope for. So, yeah, I mean, we're not going to sell anything per se. Maybe, I mean, we'll sell some things. There are people that have jobs still and stuff like that, but that's okay.
Well, enough talking about COVID because that's how we hear like on a daily basis. So let's talk about music. Progressive rock is known for its concept albums. Is it different this time around with Prehensile Tales?
No, I don't think this is a concept record. I think the nature of again, I didn't. John did the writing, but from what we've discussed and what I know of the songs, I think if there are similar themes, it's probably because John wrote all these things like on one on top of the other. So there may be patterns, and maybe related themes. I make jokes about the fact that when I was still in Spox, we did Bennett, and I sang lead on one song, and it ended up being somewhat of a favorite tune on that record, coincidentally. But the theme is such a fascinating theme, and so because it was so visual, and because a lot of people that listen to progressive rock tend to be intellectuals, the idea of doing something of that nature, even though Bennett's, had questionable desires in that. I'm sure it made a lot of the progressive fans fascinated with the story. So now we're looking for that kind of thing. And I've been picking on John because I keep hearing some little textural things creeping back in. But I think it's the nature of John. And it's just a matter of, who he is as a person and what he likes to write about. So I think that's just a question of, I mean, Bob Dylan writes, songs about society and culture. And, he's a social commentator. So, listen to 10 of his songs and you're going to hear themes. But I wouldn't call them, any one of his records, I wouldn't call it anything. They're just records,
Well, is it because the songs have been written for sometimes, like at different period, and they're not really related to each other, or?
No, actually, most of this record was written. I mean, there were a couple of songs that we tracked that didn't make the record, but from what I understand, all of this record was composed fresh for this record.
Okay, good.
I mean, in particular, "Soon But Not Today," the last song on the album, was the last thing we recorded, and literally, it was recorded a few months ago. I mean, we've really kind of blazed through this, and not that we really were thinking, let's go fast. It just John was doing, he was inspired and he had the music and we had the time and it all just came together well. And
super.
Here we are.
If you were in charge of writing a press release paper for Prehensile Tales, tell me how it would look like.
Wow.
Or maybe you did the press release.
No. I have never even thought about that. I haven't even thought of anything of that nature. I don't.
Maybe it's another way to ask you like how to describe the album, basically.
Well, it's an interesting thing because John, part of what started this whole project was, I mean, to a certain degree, John and I would talk a lot on sessions about our love for more traditional pop music.
Okay.
Even in the silliest versions of it, from the most grand of Beach Boys to the, surfing safari stuff. From the Beatles' first record to the Beatles' last record, there's still something that strings them together in terms of the way they compose, and they got better as they went along on both accounts. But there is a really specific art to writing the 2.5 to 3.5 minute song, putting things in it that make you, earworms, that make you constantly remember the song, even if you hate the song. I mean, think about how often we sang Milli Vanilli, regardless of our opinion of Milli Vanilli. I still know all the songs. It's like, oh, God, because the guy who wrote the songs was so good at the craft of finding those little things that you can remember. So the approach on this record was, how do we take that craft and use it in a scenario that has no rules, other than we have to keep those elements. There have to be little things that catch your ear, that you sing later on. You know, whether the song's 4.5 minutes long or the song's 17 minutes long, there still has to be these hooks. And John does that very well. You know, and when he's not writing progressive rock music, he's writing pop music. He's a big fan of Korean pop and that whole thing that's kind of, you know, having a big surgence right now. And it's from the point of view of the craft of being a songwriter. Anytime you can find guys like Max Martin and Diane Warren, David Foster, and these guys that write these songs that you're just like, they're worth studying. Yeah. Why does it do that? Why am I drawn to that? So he brings that into this world. So we still don't have limitations, so we can go places. The song doesn't have to be 3 minutes long. It can be 17 minutes, like, you know, one song is. But you're still going to find all those little elements of, God, I can't get that part out of my head. Oh, I can't get that melody's great. And, you know, I'm not the songwriter. I say that because as a listener, as much as I played on it and I sing on it, it's still a matter of, they're not my songs. I hear them, and I play the records. I play both these records constantly in my car because I like them. I happen to be on them as well, but I play them because I like them. And that's, you know, so I don't know if that would be a press release, but.
Well, that's very good. And you're absolutely right. They're very catchy songs. Like, I've listened to the album #1 like so many times, and like very, very catchy songs. I love it.
Yeah.
PSA is yourself, Jimmy Keegan, Ted Leonard, Dave Maros, and John Boeghold. Do I pronounce it right?
Boeghold. Yeah.
Okay, 2 albums within a year. That's very impressive. I know this was one of your objective at first, to release an album per year, but any major distinction between the 2 albums?
Yeah, I think the first album, you're gonna, if you judge based on that, you'll hear more of our history in it. You know, because it isn't just the 4 of us in relation to Spock's beard. Obviously, we were all related to Spock's beard, but also Rich Mauser. You know, engineering and, you know, mixing and mastering and all. He's tied in there as well. So there's going to be signatures. Yeah. You know, my drum sound, Dave's bass tones, Ted's voice. You know, all these things are signatures. But, you know, in Spock's, you have these grand signatures of Al and Rio that, you know, as soon as by not having them in the band, we've removed these great big signatures that make Spock's beard what it is. But that being said, you can still hear, okay, there's a carryover because we are who we are. You can't get away from it. This record, we were a little more consciously going, okay, let's go a different direction. Let's push an envelope. Let's try something else sonically. Let's get away from our comfort zones. So yeah, like any band, I mean, your first album is an experiment. The second album is when you actually understand how to experiment.
Yeah.
It's like, now we're really going to do something. Okay, let's try this. So yeah, the songs are a little more all over the map, on purpose.
Okay.
And those conversations were had, you know, when we talked about why don't we run as opposed to, you know, Lifeboat or something like that. You know, we are conscious of the fact that they're very different, and yet, because of who we are and our own signatures, they still have that tie to them. You know, it's like Genesis with That's All and, you know, Giant Hogweed stuff and everything like that. There's still Phil Collins playing drums, and there's still Tony Banks in there. You can't get away from it. Even if it's simplicity of That's All, it's still there.
So it is something that you guys talked about, like, we want to, like, PSA to sound different than any Spock's Beard album.
I don't know if we were comparing it to Spock's. We were just saying, try different avenues.
Okay.
You know, let's go down different. I mean, again, because everyone's obviously going to make, you know, certain connections and comparisons because we are so much of that. Everything that is this band is so much of that band. It wasn't that we said, let's try to get away from Spock's. We just said, let's go different avenues.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, and we're also conscious of it because we're writing we're writing and producing in a similar genre. We're listening to things and going, yeah, we're either hearing in the differences or we're hearing where, okay, just the nature of who we are, that sounds a bit like maybe we can walk away. But again, it's not at the forefront. It's just a.
And you probably want those Spockspirit fans to follow you with PSA as well, right?
Yeah, that would be great. You know, the hope is that the songs stand on their own. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, even when it comes to like any solo stuff I do, I'd love to see the Spock's fans come along. But even my solo stuff is it's not prog at all. It's prog in the way that Peter Gabriel or you know, Toy Matinee, Jellyfish is prog. It's not odd meter per se and long-winded songs. It's just fearless. I hope. And the same with this record. I mean, the Pattern Seeking Animals. We're not following the rules.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it's hard to get away from some of them.
So you mentioned that John wrote the songs for album number 1 and 2. Is it the plan moving forward? You keep it like that, or is it going to be a band effort at some point?
No. It's not even a conscious thing. I mean, the first album was about 90% John, and there were a couple of moments where Ted came in and like wrote some lyrical passages and some musical passages, but not. I mean, they were coincidental. I mean, it was because the songs were pretty much already done by the time we got them, and they were more just, you know, suggestive things like, hey, what about this? And in some cases, it was more than just a melodic suggestion or a rhythmic suggestion. And then on this record, it's John's songs, but you know, the influence of any one musician. You know, there's sections where Dave will come in, and because Dave is such a great composer as well, he'll hear things and go, well, what about this? And create a part. And then, you know, by creating a bass part, it's suggesting other things happen in music. So it's always, you know, the influence of the individual musicians is very strong even within the composition of the song.
Okay.
As far as future albums, and we will definitely be doing future albums. No, John, there's no dictatorship. It's not that John is saying, I'm the writer. You know, you have great composers with Ted and Dave.
Oh,
you know, if they should come with, we did actually have a song that Ted presented, but we collectively felt that it was, you know, it wasn't following with the flow of this album, and suggested that it may be better in a different form for Ted, maybe as a solo song, or he's presenting it to Enchant. Either one of those places, it would sound much better.
Okay.
But it's a brilliant song. I mean, that's the hardest part is when you're like, oh my God, this song's so great, but it's not really in this whole thing. And
yeah, a cruel decision, eh?
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's entirely possible the next album could be half Ted, or you know, or Dave or something like that, or me. I mean, I could throw some stuff in there as well. And we're all of the mindset of if it's a great song, then it's a great song. It doesn't matter.
Good. Do you think you achieved whatever goals you had with the first album? Like, was the response up to your expectations?
Well, I'm an optimist. My expectations are always like a 20-year-old. You know, this is gonna make us. We're gonna be, you know, we're gonna sell millions of records and tour. I always, you know, have that little bit in the back of my head, which is why I still do it. You know, because I'm always thinking there's a chance for everything. You know, I always set really high hopes. But I'm also a realist. I also know how old I am and, you know, what's most likely going to happen. But there's that part of me that's always like, who knows? Maybe with the right person getting a hold of it. And so, yeah, I think it did what we set out. I would have liked more people to hear it. And I still want people to hear it. I mean, it's not as though the album's gone. And I hope that with this record as well, I want people to hear it. Now, every artist wants their people to like it as well. I think the first step is hear it.
Yep.
I want to figure out that little magical thing about the internet that puts it in people's ears so they can hear it. How do you get it out? So, and record companies, as brilliant as they might be, nobody has that secret anymore. That everything's changing so quickly that just when you think I've got the perfect idea, everything changes.
Yep.
So it's really hard to make predictions, and so you just set the same goals. This one's gonna sell 1 million copies. We're gonna be rock stars.
It helps. It helps staying young too, eh? Like.
Yeah.
Just like the first album, the art cover is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. Is it the same artist this time around?
No, actually, John went outside for. Thomas did work on it. Thomas, you were hard, but he did more of the packaging aspect of it. The main artwork. Oh boy, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's on the. God, John will tell you. I'll find out. I'll get you the name so you can put the link in there. But yeah,
Yep.
There's a very specific artist that John went poking around and found, and managed to get the rights to this piece of work, which is the gorilla with the sort of city on the back. It's a pretty detailed, crazy piece of work. When you get right into the finest little things on it, this guy did a really amazing job. But it was something that already existed.
Okay.
We licensed it from him. It's a piece of his, one of his pieces that we used. And then Thomas, because he's also a genius. I mean, the work that he's done for us as well as for, Spock's and so many other bands. His involvement was more in extending it to, the back, doing the rest of the cover art, things of that nature. So he was involved.
Okay. Well, personally, I think it's the most beautiful art cover or album cover this year so far, and it's
wow, thanks. That's kind of one thing so far that's surprising me is how people are responding to the cover.
Well,
we're getting a lot of great comments on the cover, and
it's attractive. Like you want to hear the music because the cover is so beautiful. It's just like buying a bottle of wine, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, everything's about the packaging. You hope what's inside is good.
As you know, physical album sales are rapidly declining. Even like well-known stores, just like a CD Baby, will no longer sell CDs and vinyls. So for a band like PSA, like what are the methods used to ensure or hope for viability nowadays?
Well, I don't know what the record company is doing. I mean, I have my opinions on that. I'm of the mindset that we're in a deep transitional phase. I don't think, like I said just a few minutes ago, I don't think anyone's got the formula yet. I think record companies drag their feet, and part of why the sales of physical items dropped is because they weren't willing to fully embrace the digital world. Okay, they're doing it now, but when you look at artists that, like Billie Eilish, who made a presence on YouTube before any record label was even involved, and she was already making money. She was already, or her brother, that they were already successful in of themselves, and it took a record company just to kind of come along and go, okay, now let's kind of push it over the top. And that's sort of what they're doing now. Any major label, they're not signing anybody unless you've got, so many people on YouTube following you, social media. And in other words, they're not developing anymore. They're only buying a developed product.
Yep.
Somewhere in all of that, we have to come back to that concept. I don't know how it will work in a digital world, but the idea of entities with money hiring people, and their job is to develop an artist, the producers and the to create these things. I think when that concept comes back, we'll sell product again. because right now everything is really kind of superficial. Even the fact that we embrace Billie Eilish so much, and we embrace these, we as in the general population, pop music has really kind of lost its depth. Very rare that you get artists that have lyrical content that we're interested in. And even if it's in a fun sense, because Michael Jackson was fun, but there was still something being said. Even the way he talked about, burning this disco out and stuff like that. These were well-crafted songs. There was artistry at every level, from the conception of the song all the way through the production of the song and the arrangements of the song, the musicianship, and then the marketing. And there's artistry all the way across the board. And we ditched so much of that. We're relying on the simplicity. Oh, we can do this for cheaper. We can do this for.
Yeah.
It's haunting us now because there's no depth in the art, and people are going outside to artists like us, to artists, that they find on the internet. They find through a buddy, or my girlfriend played this for me, my boyfriend played this for me, whatever it is. It's not the same old thing of going to a record store and walking around and looking for that cover that sparks your eye, or hearing about that artist and let's go find out what they did and buy 2 records and see what they like, and that needs to come back. So in our world, in the progressive world, or the more independent type styles of music, we've always relied on word of mouth. Nothing's changed for us. The idea of selling CDs and everything like that, we're still not selling that many CDs. We never did sell that many CDs. If you go back to when Spock's Beard came about, the early 90s, when Marillion kicked into gear, when Flower Kings and these other bands that all started around the same time, Marillion a little earlier, but they've all relied on word of mouth. Marillion had a hit, for lack of a better term, but still their existence has been on word of mouth and by trying new concepts. When they tried the whole idea of let's crowdsource this record, that put them back on the map, and now they were famous for being famous, for pushing the envelope. We need to be pushing more envelopes. People need to keep doing that.
Really?
God, do you know who Josh Freese is?
Yeah.
Okay, so Josh and I grew up together. We were in a band together as kids, and he did something when he did one of his solo records. So his solo records are generally kind of goofy and, just more, comical. There's more comical aspects to them, and then it's him just being a badass, that kind of, sort of very Frank Zappa kind of thing, just not as out. But his method of selling his first CD or second CD, I forget which one it was, the one was just genius. It was the idea of creating this, these tiered levels of, if you just buy the CD or you just buy the download, you get a download. You buy the CD, you get these certain things. For this amount of money, you buy a T-shirt and a CD, and you get this. As the tiers kept getting up, the things that you got stranger and stranger, all the way up to the highest level where he takes you around in Danny Carey's, Lamborghini and drives you down to Mexico, and you get high on shrooms, and it's like, these things. And in his mind, he's thinking, no one's going to have the money to do this. No way in hell anyone's going to buy these things. These are there just to get people's attention.
Yeah.
And they got people's attention, and people bought them. So he's like, oh my God, I have to do this now. And that was his complaint. Not complaint. That was his. I don't know how you would word that. That was his challenge in it, is that he came up with these bizarre, crazy ideas without thinking that anyone would ever spend $20,000 on something like that. And before he knew it, people were spending. Those were one of the first things that went. I want to meet, the singer for A Perfect Circle and Tool, and I want to go hang out and play miniature golf with them. And people bought them.
That's crazy.
So that's literally why Spock's did a couple of crowdsourcing, because I saw him do that and I thought, oh God, we got to get in on that concept. We knew about Marillion as well. The more artists do those kinds of things, stepping out of the box and trying something new, pushing envelopes, and you'll see copycats after, and that's fine. That's not a problem. But we need to start doing that because there's no rules right now. It's a digital world, and the market is ripe and open for creativity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all the way through the chain, from the musical aspect of it to the selling of it. And record companies would be wise if they started hiring people purely to come up with creative ways of selling things. You know, like they used to do with marketing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's a very good answer. Absolutely. Stepping out of the box, I guess, is something that the bands have to keep pushing and keep
Yeah.
pushing. Yeah.
Remember the name of the music. It's progressive. You know, keep going, push,
Love it.
progress, try something different.
During the interview with Dave last year, I asked about possible live performances. What are your thoughts? I know it's a weird period right now to talk about live performances, but what are your thoughts now that you have more material and you have material to support, new album?
Yeah, we're chomping at the bit to play. We were supposed to do Rozfest in Florida, and we were really excited about that. On top of, we were excited to, because we were supposed to go on with Big Train, and we were gonna, looking forward to seeing Nick, and and we know other guys in Big Train as well, and there's other bands in that bill that were fantastic that we know. We were looking forward to that whole process, and then also, getting that first gig under our belt and then begin the process. And that's another thing about being creative, is figuring out ways, because touring and act like this is hard. Just getting people to buy in. Are you gonna fill a 500 seat, 1,000 seat venue? And it's a big challenge, and part of that is partially because people aren't seeing shows. I don't think that people aren't willing to go out. I don't think people are. I think they keep seeing bands just play music, and I'd like to see bands embrace the David Bowie and Peter Gabriel and those artists, the Queen, that put a little more into Genesis and their light shows, Pink Floyd and their. I mean, okay, those things require huge budgets, but even on the smaller scale of doing things that are going to grab people's attention.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we sat down and thought about anything like that out of the gate, but I think the more artists do that kind of stuff, that again, push the envelope, try new things, put on a mask.
I like to think, yeah, exactly. I like to think that progressive rock fans, they like their live shows.
Yeah, but at some point, even that starts to become, I can get the DVD.
Yeah, true.
And in the U.S., the challenge is that because progressive rock is not filling stadiums, we're dealing with, we're trying to get, like I said, 300 to 1,000 people at a show. When you start doing the numbers, the cost of putting on a show and touring it around a place as big as the United States, it becomes financially impossible.
True.
And regardless of how badly we want to do it. And I keep telling, whatever band I'm working with, I keep telling them, that the thing that we need to do is embrace the old concept of, what did we do when we were 20? There was a time when we didn't have responsibilities, and we didn't have families, and all we had is that dream, and running through our head, let's go be rock stars. What did we do, and what were we willing to do? So when you take that mentality and you apply it now, okay, well, we have families, and we have rent and mortgage and bills, but what are we willing to do? I'd like to see that attitude a little more grand. And again, the other side of it is that everyone's, I'm 50, Ted's 48, 49, Dave's 102. And it's hard to get old dogs to learn new tricks, but we'll figure it out. But the desire to play is very strong. We want to play.
Good.
And we had the band already lined up because John doesn't want to tour. So we were going to take two additional people. We were going to take Dennis Atlas was going to be the primary keyboard player. Dennis is this young keyboard
Yeah.
singer, guitar player. You know, I'm sure he plays anything he wants to play. Freak. That's just a bundle of energy, and you know, super talented and a super great guy and everything. We send him all the material, and we got a set list already, and we were, you know, ready to go. And then the other guy was going to be my friend Walter Eno, and Walter is also a ridiculously, you know, plays a million instruments.
Okay.
He toured for a long time with Survivor,
Okay.
as well as he's been recently working with the Babies and the Eagles of Death Metal.
Wow. Okay.
He's filled in on a slot there, but he's also a guy that just, I mean, he gets called in because he can play anything. He gets called in by a lot of tours to fill in for, you know, like if something happens, you know, like, oh, so and so broke his arm on the fifth show, can you come out and fill in for, you know, these 10 shows? He's that guy.
Okay.
On a countless artists. I mean, a list that would go on for days, because he keyboard, yeah, no problem. Guitar, yeah, no problem. Oh, you need a, you know, bass player, yeah, no problem. He's that guy. He plays saxophone, and I met him here in L.A. and that was it. It's like I did a gig with him once where he played guitar and sang. It was like, great, okay, he's a guitar player, singer. And then the next gig I did with him, he played bass. He's like a really good bass player. Hold on a minute. And then, you know, 2 months later, I did a gig and he had a full keyboard rig, and he was, you know, and burning. And it's not just like he's doing, you know, little Duran Duran stuff. He's burning. And so with those two guys, we were like, okay, this is going to kill. It's going to be, you know, really well played, and we're going to be able to represent these songs at a real high level. That's as much as possible sound like the record when we get out there, just with, you know, live energy. You know, and then the world stopped, and so we'll pick up. We'll keep going.
Oh, we will. Any other projects you're currently involved with that you can share with Profile?
Well, my solo record is about, let's see, it's about 9/10 done. So that will be coming soon, and I've been saying that for 7 years now. But it actually will be coming soon. I have things in process that are being done. What else? You know, I think there's always little things around the corner. I don't know of anything specific. I'm doing a record just as a session musician. I'm doing records all the time. I just worked for a couple of artists. I don't know the status of that kind of thing, but yeah, I mean, it's always little things around the corner. No particular band, if that's what you mean.
Oh, that's good. That's good. At least you're working on a solo that we can, you know, keep an eye on in the near future. I have just a few more questions, but they only require 1 or 2 word answers.
Okay.
Okay. Who's your all-time favorite drummer?
John Bonham.
Ooh. Little Arter, to your likes, who and what is the most beautiful drum solo ever?
Most beautiful drum solo ever. Ooh. Well, so Bonham started everything for me, and funny, it wasn't Moby Dick. It was Song Remains the Same, that record, but it was the whole interaction on the jam that goes on between John Paul Jones and John Bonham on Whole Lotta Love, where he's doing the theremin bit. I love that whole section. That's what started me playing drums. I know the Moby Dick solo verbatim. I can play that thing from top to bottom. But to be honest, my favorite solos are more the simple ones. Are you familiar with Medeski Martin Wood?
I am not.
So there's a trio. It's an organ, bass, and drums trio, and then they've since added John Schofield. He tours and plays with them all the time. Billy Martin, the drummer, has a couple of short solos that he does on some of their records that are just hard. They're just sublime. They're not about chops and look at me. It's about, you know, playing something interesting in relation to the song.
Okay.
It's about being melodic with a non-melodic instrument. you know, a la Terry Bozzio in that sense. I mean, Terry takes it to an extreme. But even Terry, I mean, he's another. I mean, if you ask me my favorite drummer tomorrow, and I'll say Terry Bozzio, or I'll say Stuart Copeland, or Phil Collins, or Jeff Porcaro, Steve Gadd. But yeah, I love solos like that. I love uh, Bill Stewart. There's a
Okay.
drummer named Bill Stewart that does, you know, a lot of straight ahead jazz, also a lot of organ stuff, and his solos just are always surprising and and fascinating and interesting and never about, again, it's never about the chops of it. It's about the musicality of it. So I tend to favor drum solos when I do favor drum solos, because I don't really favor drum solos.
Good. That was more than one word.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Billy Martin.
I love it. I love it. You can speak forever. I don't mind it. One word to describe prehensile tails.
I'm trying to think of the word. Um, Fascinating.
Love it. Not easy to answer, but do you have a favorite track on the album, or at least one that you really like playing?
Um, Why Don't We Run was my favorite from the beginning. I think it might have been the first song that John presented to us. I seem to. It's the one that stands out to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the whole record. I like the whole record a lot. Um, but Why Don't We Run was the one that made me go, now we're talking, because it's the most challenging in terms of. Uh, to me, it was the one that would challenge the both the fans that we've already picked up from the first record, or the carryovers from Spock's or something. It was the one that I thought would do one of two things. It would either make people go, I friggin' love this song, it's the best song ever, or it would make them go, what's this?
That's
Because it's out of the box concept. It's these interesting, you know, the Japanese Asian melodic. Well, no one's when people hear this, it has, you know, obviously Asian influences. It has Middle Eastern influences. I play a darbuka on it. um, it has Spanish influences. It's, you know, in the hands of the right person, this could easily be a dance song, like in clubs. At the same time, it fits perfectly in the middle of this record.
okay.
So that's the one that kind of, you know, sticks out to me as it's the most challenging and interesting one. Not challenging hard. It's actually the easiest one to play.
If you could play any venue in the world, which one would that be?
You know, it's hard to nail that down, because I might be able to say like one per country. There's places in Italy that I'd like to. I don't even know what they're called. I've just seen them and gone, I want to play there. You know, because the older, you know, sort of like what Pink Floyd did
In
in
Pompeii.
yeah, Pompeii. That concept, I'd love to do something like, and then uh, David Gilmour came back later and did a show, and you know, that kind of thing just intrigues me, because it's the surrounding of humanity. I'd love to play somewhere in a giant place in Brazil. You know, uh, I don't think it's places as much. I've seen some shows to where I would have loved to have been part of them. Um, there is a great. It's hard to find, actually. There's a great video of Peter Gabriel singing Biko in South America, which had been outlawed. You know, this was an absolute protest song, and it was not allowed to be, you know, it was criminal to sing or play that song. And seeing the video of him once Nelson Mandela had become, you know, president, and they opened the borders and people could come in, and allowing him to play that song, and the sheer concept of being able to actually sing it to the people you meant it for.
Wow.
This
Yeah.
beautiful, powerful song, you know, for this wonderful culture that was so deserving of compassion, and to be able to do that when I saw that, I just, so I wouldn't say places as much as I'd love to be part of something like that.
Okay.
Of an experience like that. You know, I mean, you know, Pink Floyd has done things like that. I mean, there's a lot of artists, you know, Joni Mitchell, all these artists that actually write these really, you know, valuable songs that I'd love to be part of those experiences.
Totally get it. Yeah. Now, if you could play with any musician, dead or alive, who would that be?
Peter Gabriel.
Okay. Yourself, are you more into digital CDs or vinyls?
I don't care about vinyl.
Okay.
I'm glad people want to buy them because it's, you know, something that interests them, and if it makes them buy product, then cool. But no, I completely embrace digital, and I have since the day it came out.
Roger that. Last question. You get to keep only one album out of those three. Which one would that be? Genesis, Selling England by the Pound? Yes, Close to the Edge, or Pink Floyd, The Wall?
The Wall.
You keep The Wall.
Yeah.
Roger that.
And I'm huge fans of all those bands. I'm a huge Genesis fan, a huge Yes fan. I would probably even say that I like those bands more than I like Pink Floyd, but I like that record more than I like those records.
Got it. Yeah. Hey, that's it, Jimmy. Thanks for your time. It was wonderful to have you on Profile. Good to see you again.
It's nice to be had. Thank you.
The new album on May 15th, Prehensile Tales. Keep an eye. It's a very, very, very good album. I appreciate it a lot. So
you'll start seeing other little singles and releases, you know, over the next few weeks. We've got another one coming shortly, and then we're about to shoot somehow we're going to magically shoot a video.
So I wish you tons of success.
Cheers.
Cheers.